You have got to be kidding me. 12 plus 2 brings us to a 14. 13 or more is affected unit is eliminated. Eliminated units are removed from the map. Son of a bitch. So even after getting really excited about that, I go and roll a flippin' 12. I can't even believe it. I cannot believe that shit. Oh man, you are my last hope, my friend. That discovery of the rule, you have failed the Terran core. Away with you. Son of a bitch. I'm getting wiped out here, people. Game turn 7. At the end of game turn 6, or the remaining of game turn 6, this unit here got into combat with the single Lancer that was in this stack and killed him, sent him away. We finished the turn, moved the game turn marker. The Queen tried to gain mind control over a Lancer unit, was unsuccessful. This Lancer unit tried to break the mind control, was unsuccessful. I wanted to, before I moved, I wanted to get in a ranged combat with this Queen here and then get the hell out of here just for some sort of revenge. And there's a few rules, so this kind of is a good chance to illustrate all these rules in one. The first thing that kind of negates it right out of the gate without even going further is you cannot get into a ranged attack if you're in a box with an enemy controlled unit. So I can't do it regardless, but let's pretend, just for the sake of clarifying some other things, let's pretend that this guy wasn't there. Let's pretend that this was our setup. The maximum amount of doorways in between the units engaged in a ranged combat can only be 1. So for example, if this unit was in the hatchery and I was here, let's say that those were 2 doors. That's not a good example. Let's use this example. If I was here, the Queen was there, that's 2 boxes away, but there's 2 doors between us. We couldn't do that. They call it kind of a line of sight. So if you're just looking through 1 door, you can have a line of sight directly to your target. If you're looking through 2 doorways, you're not going to have a direct line of sight. Is there reasoning, I guess, behind it? So in this situation, I would still be able to get into a ranged combat. When you do, you just pick one of your units to fight the enemy, basically, because I have two Lancer units stacked here. I can't combine the 2 of them to both compete in this ranged combat to make the chances better. I have to do it one at a time. A unit can only get into a ranged combat once per turn. If I was fighting, if there was a stack of Xenon players here, Xenon enemy units here, I would have to specify which one I was attacking. You can't attack a stack. You also can't, even though this is 2 spaces away, even if there was just 1 doorway between us, let's say that it was in this example and there was a unit here, even though it's 2 spaces away, you obviously can't fire around corners. Same reason, line of sight. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. So, as I said though, because this guy is in the same room as us, it negates anything that we were going to do. So, revenge will be sweeter when I rescue the hostages and blow this motherfucking ship up. So, I'm just going to get my guys out of here and continue on this path and make my way to probably this room and then the engine room and laser pod room, and try to take out one of those engines to extend this game turn. Here we are in game 7 and I'm still alive, mostly, down to kind of a small stack here. Anyway, there you have it. All right, so our Xenon Force attacked one of our 2 Lancer units. We had a modifier of a 1. We rolled a 5 plus the 1 added it, made it to 6. On a roll of 5 or 6, one unit becomes incapacitated. So we split up this unit here. And underneath you'll see the other single Lancer that's now incapacitated. There's a few rules for incapacitated units. They cannot get into ranged or melee combat. Their movement allowance is no more than 2 movement points per turn, or their movement allowance, whichever is less. So in this case that would be 2. What else? Their combat strength is reduced by 3. So basically making his combat 0, so he can't fight, period. Although attacking melee or ranged combat. Yeah, that's a weird one because it says incapacitated 13.2 incapacitated units may never attack in melee or ranged combat. 13.3 if attacked in melee combat and incapacitated units melee combat strength is reduced by 3. I see. So therefore it would change the modifier. So if they got into a melee combat again, it would be 8 minus 0. So there would be no die modifier on this at all. So there you have that. Is that right? Yeah, I sometimes get my head twisted around about that, but that sounds right. So in order to... incapacitated units may not perform any other activity, any activity other than moving. They can still do things like cross through doorways, that sort of thing. But if it was like an engineer, they couldn't put holes in walls, that sort of thing. They couldn't shut down the life support or whatever else. They can't do anything else. In order to get rid of the incapacitated marker, we have to go back onto one of our darter holding boxes. So basically it's making our way onto one of the darters. Then we have to spend a full turn, a full game turn there where we don't expend any movement points. That will then take the incapacitated marker off, and then we're free to kind of go back out onto the Xenon ship and continue with trying to beat the game here. Excuse me, sorry. So that's the rules there. What else can I tell you? That's it. See, that's the thing I'm confused about. I'm going to read about that. So for a die roll modifier, you're taking the 8 and you're subtracting 3 from it, which gives you a 5. So that's what you're adding on to the die roll. Now, if he has a 0, so you're taking 0 away from 8, doesn't that leave 8? So wouldn't the die roll modifier be 8? Oh man. All right, let's go to the rules once more. The answer to that is yes, of course, that would be the way. I had a brain fart. Obviously, it would be, because you're adding 8 to it, which gives the attacking player more chances of taking your guy out. You want to be matched with them or higher than them to have no die roll modifier, so it makes it more difficult. I don't know why, I just kind of got confused about that. So of course, 8 minus 0 is 8. I'm going to add 8 to whatever roll I get. So the chances are that that incapacitated unit, if he doesn't get far enough away, which I don't think he will, he might get lucky and stay out of range. Well, actually he will, because he uses what? 2 movement points? Yeah, so he would get there, which puts him out of range if this Xenon unit comes here, puts him out of range of that, which then we use that 3, so it would only be a modifier of 3, so he still would stand a chance, but we'll see what happens. So this has happened, that's taken care of. The last phases of this turn are the usual evacuation segment, outer defense segment, hyperdrive segment, none of which apply to us right now. So it's moving the game turn chit to game turn number 8 that I didn't think I would make it to, which really gets us close to here. It's going to take me, I don't know how many turns, so I don't even think it's going to be possible for me to get to this engine room before we get to game turn 12. Because these guys have what, 4 and 3, so 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 1 game turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 game turns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 game turns, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would get us to space 11 by the time game turn 12 came up. Oh, actually you can get in this way. Let's count that again, 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be game turn 8 where we're on now. 1, 2, 3, 4, game turn 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, game turn 10. 1, 2, 3, yeah, game turn 11. We can make a break for, sorry about that glare there, we can make a break for the engine room and maybe still stand a chance to take this down a couple of points. I guess the thing is it worth it? We have, wrong one. We still have 4 chits left in Cup A where the Queens and Master Queen are. Maybe it's worth it. Why don't we go for it? Why don't we try to shut down the engine? That'll buy us a couple of more game turns. We can try to shut down the second engine as well, which would then completely take this out of the equation. Then we can get to these boxes. Let's go for that for strategy. How does that sound? All right, let's see what happens. Here we go. We're at game turn 11. Next game turn is 12, which is going to be their attempt to jump into hyperdrive. Is that what it's called? Yeah, hyperdrive. So the hyperdrive segment will come into play the next game turn. What do we have up here? That incapacitated unit, nowhere to be found. You know why? Because he got killed. So my last kind of ditch effort was to take him to space 44 a few game turns ago. He was attacked by this unit who could still get at him with its reduced movement points, and even with the reduced melee combat of 3, he still rolled enough to kill the guy. The good news is, let's see what we have up here. We have our units here, and they are right in range. These darter, or not darter, sorry, whatever the hell they're called, Lancer units. These Lancer units are well within range to make it into the laser pod, engine room, etc., to do some damage on one of the engines. The first thing that will happen though is as soon as we enter that section, just as when we enter these areas, there will be all our chit pulls to see who's populating the area and where they're positioned. So we might get into a situation with one of them in one of the engine rooms or in both of the engine rooms. We'll find out when we get there. Nothing else has ever happened with this guy on mind control. Every single time I roll, it's never been a 1 or a 2, so they've just been living happily together in this hive. Maybe he'll be able to break it, which would be great, especially if we end up taking out the engines and get rid of this. We could use another Lancer unit to join our meager squad here, our survivors. These guys just keep moving closer to us because their instruction is, every time it seems to come up in this Xenon action chart, is to move towards enemy units that are 10 spaces or less away, so that's what they keep doing. Yeah, nothing else, so I will set up all this here and we'll see what happens. Have I mentioned yet how much I love this game? It's amazing. It's really incredible. So we have our Lancers in the hull lock. That's as far as our movement allowance would get us, which is fine. It doesn't mean anything. We can still get to places because it's a doorway +2 plus a doorway +1 is 4 movement points, which both of these have, so they can still get to the engine room in turn 12. Early on is their movement in combat and destruction phase. I should check in though about which units can actually destroy the engine, because now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if it's only engineers, which is the 4-3 an engineer? Let me just check here. The 4-3 is the engineer, so we do have an engineer still alive coming with us. His movement will only allow us 1, 2, 3 is a doorway. They tell you not to stand in doorways basically, so it'll get him into here, which I don't know. I don't think that gets him into the engine room. So we also have, if that is the case, we also have a chance of turn 12. The hyperdrive segment, the Hive goes into hyperdrive if so indicated by the game turn, the status of the engine rooms, and the Xenon player's initial expenditure of resource points. So I think we might be SOL, but we'll find out. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, because in the meantime we've populated the area. The Queen, of course, was populated right in one of the engine rooms. The good news is our allotment of chits we had to pull was only 1, and as we've found out in the past, that one of them has to go into the same space as the Queen. Then we had our random chit. Guess where it ended up? The one that's upside down. Take a wild guess. Anybody? I'll give you 5 guesses. The first 4 don't count. Motherfucker, it ended up in the other engine room. Can you believe it? Unreal. Again, I wasn't being sarcastic when I said I love this game. I'm really liking this. This is a really fantastic way to kind of what might be the end of it. And even though I might lose, it's really written out so well for solo play. All the stuff that's happened to us, the fact that we're down to the wire with just a few units left, is incredible, and this is what we're met with. Of course you'd be met with that. Of course they would be in the engine rooms to make sure that everything was okay. Fantastic. So that said, let's see what happens, because I mean there will be some movement by these guys because we're in their range. So we'll see what occurs here, and yeah, I'll come back. Holy crap. Talk about down to the wire. Here we are in game turn 12. Still under mind control. Still closing in on the laser pods and engines room. We haven't done the movement yet. On the last turn, we did get into a fight. He killed one of the Lancer units. We were left with the double at the beginning of game turn 12. There was a mind control phase. As you can see, one of the Lancer units is now under mind control of the Hive Queen. So that's the bad news. The good news is Xenon laser pods and engine rooms may be destroyed by any occupying Space Marine unit if the box in question is unoccupied by Xenon controlled units. So we don't know what's in there. Booby traps. I think booby traps are Xenon units, but we'll find out what it is when we move into the box. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens because it's occupied by a unit. It's also, I think, I'll look at the range because I don't think you can see what the unit is unless you are in the box with it. So maybe we can get into a ranged combat with the queen from this room. No, we can't because we're in an enemy occupied room, so we can't do that. And also line of sight. So I think our only solution is to make our way into that room and see what it is, and then deal with it as we can. The engine room revealed an 834 Xenon unit there, which is a soldier. Of course it did. The good news is we made it into the room and we kicked his ass, so he's dead. Which takes care of him, which leaves us in the engine room alone. Now, according to the sequence of plays, the Terran movement and ranged combat segment, that's the segment where you can perform other activities. For example, like destroying the, trying to demolish the engine room. I'm going to double check that, but I'm positive that that's when that would happen. Then the Terran melee combat segment is what we just went to, so now we're into the Xenon movement and combat segment. I will double check about that, but again, I'm 99% sure that that's when it would happen. When we get into this, I'll come back with the results, and then I will read about this hyperdrive segment to see if it's a die roll or if it's just it's a thing. I think it was a die roll. To determine whether this hyperdrive actually engages. But we will find out, so those things will happen and I'll come right back. Alright, here we are. So movement happened, fighting happened, our single Lancer was incapacitated. As I said already, he killed the guy in the one engine room. These units kept moving towards. Nobody broke their mind control. And then we go to hyperdrive. During the hyperdrive segment of the appropriate game turn, which we are in, the Terran player is informed that the Hive has entered hyperdrive and the game ends. So there's no die roll to see if it was successful. There's nothing like that. It's just a fact that we are in hyperdrive and we have officially lost the game. With one unit standing and one incapacitated unit and 2 units under mind control. We were right there. All of that said, incredible game, incredible. It met all of my expectations and kind of exceeded them, especially finding these solo rules. This is quickly jumped into my favorite of all of the Ares games that I've played so far. This is high up there. If you watch my videos, if you know which ones that I've reviewed, I would not hesitate for a second to recommend this to anybody who's curious about getting into these games. Yes, I messed up a couple of the rules. Yes, I was still a bit confused, even though it was kind of 6 pages of rules. But there's a boxed version, there's the magazine edition, which is this one. They come up fairly often. I haven't looked on Board Game Geek right now. There might even be one for sale right now. I can't remember. Either way, highly recommended that you hunt this one down and give it a try if you're looking to get into these Ares games, or if you have no experience with SPI games, period. It's a great introduction. It's a really fantastic game. Like, I can't say it enough. I can't believe how kind of tense those last few game turns were to get us to the brink of the game. I mean, we were so close. If that room would have been unoccupied, we would have had a chance at demolishing one of the engine rooms, which would have bought us a couple of game turns to kill that queen and demolish the other engine, which would turn off the hyperdrive and given us a fighting chance to kind of make it to the hostages and possibly off the ship. I doubt that, but really, really great. The kind of artificial intelligence, I guess, for lack of a better word, is phenomenal. So I'll say it again, the solo game rules are from Moves magazine, issue 56. If you just type in, I think I found it by Rescue from the Hive, Moves 56 on Google, and a link came up to a page where you could print them out. Works really well together. Yeah, really, really fun game. Incredibly fun, I will say, even. There you have it, Rescue from the Hive. I hope you all enjoyed watching this as much as I did playing it. Buy it. Just find it. Just buy it. You won't regret it. Really great. I'm going to set it up and play again. Thanks for watching.